I remember third grade going into fourth grade, and I was in class and I kept doing this. And my mom said, Marquise, why are you squinting like that? Why you always got these headaches? What's going on here? And I would sit there and just be like, I don't know, my eyes ain't doing what they need to do. But I was a kid who liked to read, I liked to learn, all of that. But I remember when I went to the doctors and they said, he needs glasses. I said, no, I don't. I was like, I don't need glasses, I'm not gonna wear them, because in my mind, that meant I lost a sense of my cool factor. My two older siblings, they played sports. My two younger siblings, they played sports. I played the cello. So we have very different worlds. My mom, she was an athlete. And so when I think around the representation that I had, as I think around what it meant for me to put on these glasses, it made me even more different. And for me, I was just like, I don't want this. And then I had to think about it. Why didn't I want this? You ever seen The Fresh Prince? Yeah. I was like, this is gonna make me a Carlton. I wanna be a Will. And then I think around all the TV I grew up on as well. You had Steve Urkel. I said, a nerd. I don't know if I want that. You had Wade, if you knew Kim Possible. He stayed inside the room. He was never outside. He was not the cool kid. And so as you go through all of these representations of the intellectual black boy, the smart black boy, I was like, I don't see anybody who's cool. You had, if you couldn't be Steve, then you had to take off the glasses and become Stefan. If you watch Ugly Betty, she had to have a complete makeover. So even no matter what your representation was, what I noticed is, oh, I don't see anybody who is cool who wears glasses. And so I remember as a kid when I had to enter fourth grade in a brand new school, and I said, they're only going to see me as a nerd. I did not want to wear my glasses. I saw how cool my older siblings were. They did not wear glasses. Little did I know my older brother needed glasses, but he just wouldn't wear them. So I said, okay, we're a little different. We're not gonna do the same thing. However, I realized not wearing those glasses became a headache. I got another headache, I got another headache, I got another headache. And so I was like, well, what is it about this that I'm just like not wanting to wear them? And so after a while, I began to embrace what it meant to wear my glasses. My glasses actually brought me clarity, no pun intended, but they really did. But they also became my armor. I became the kid who was the smart kid in class. I was the one that they said, well, if I need to cheat off somebody, it might be Marquise. And I'd be like, y'all can't be taking my answers all the time. At least if I'm gonna get an A, give yourself a B, okay? Pick something, make it look like you didn't copy my answers. But I think about it, and as I was thinking around putting this together, I'm just like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen the intersection of intellect and cool. And then I think around what are those impacts that happen in popular media. How do we start to think around ourselves? Anybody here have to wear glasses? How many of you said, I'm gonna go to contacts, I'm not going to glasses? Got it. We said, we switching it up. Because it's always when you take off them glasses, there's always this magical transformation, right? However, I'm just like, what would it look like to have Stefan and Steve live in the same body? And that's something I had always thought about, especially as I'm coming up to the speech now. But what we don't realize is that this also has real world implications. We think around the smart black boy, and I think around my role as an educator. I was an English teacher at an all boys high school. I think around getting them to engage in reading, getting to engage in learning, getting to engage in fun. And when I tell you, I said, yeah, you said that word, right? You're using your SAT words. Mr. Richards, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Well, why not? I don't want them to think I'm smart. I don't want them to think I'm smart. That's what a kid said to me. And I think about that a lot, especially as we are seeing less men wanting to go to college. We're thinking around those numbers, and that's a popular conversation to have right now, is because there hasn't been a person who has been deemed a cool nerd, right? And so I challenge a lot of the things that I thought about as a kid. As that young boy, I did not want to be the nerd because being a nerd meant a sacrifice of social status. Being a nerd meant that I was not going to be the first one picked on the basketball team. Being a nerd meant that I could not walk around and people be like, I want to be that guy, right? That's what I did not want. But I realized, and as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh, I didn't want that because I've never seen somebody who looked like me. I've never seen somebody who wore the glasses and didn't have to be the butt of the joke or a hotep or maybe a scammer. You said, right. You said if you're smart, you're either a hotep. If you're smart, you might be somebody on like a FBI show and you might be the person inside, right? Doing all the computer tech stuff. But I said, when you think, yeah, you're realizing you're seeing a trend, right? But I think about this a lot of the time as I was putting this speech together, and I'm like, my glasses became my armor became my protection, my glasses provided clarity, and as I begin to navigate this world, as I enter 30, not too much over there in the peanut gallery, thank you. I said, damn. But in reality, I think around all of these things together. As we think around this crisis that is happening right now, I think around the young Black boys that are scared to be rewarded because of their intellect, rewarded because of their emotional intelligence, rewarded because of their creativity. Those are not the pieces that we tend to reward in young Black boys. I'm a 6'2", 245 Black man in a space. They said, what you doing with all that height? You just playing a cello? That don't make no sense. And so I think about this often as I think around what I was rewarded for. My mom began to bond with me differently because I played basketball. That's a very different world. She was an athlete, she knew that was a connection point. But as I continue to think around the world that I grew up in and the world that I wanted to live in, I was like, yeah, I'm only playing basketball for you. And in order for a 13, 14-year-old boy to realize all of that, after all these years of AAU, summer ball, right? AAU's not cheap. Going to the gym with my coach, playing school ball, and all of these pieces. Yes, it was a great era to really learn the value of discipline, but it wasn't necessarily the space where I felt like I was truly myself. It wasn't until I found myself in my books, reading James Baldwin's literature, finding myself on stage in theater, finding my love and having to pick, it was either your cello or your basketball, because both practices happened at the same time. And I said, we're gonna go with the cello. But I realized in those moments that I was nurtured in my creativity, that's where I also began to be rewarded even more. More people said, Marquise, you are so smart. Marquise, this is where you are at. Marquise, this is who you are. This is the confidence that I needed. So not only did my glasses become my armor, they became a central part of my identity because now it meant that, I can still wear my glasses, run circles around these people, and if I need to step on the court, I can still step on the court every once in a while. Don't ask me today, I haven't played in years. However, I do recognize these pieces all played a central role into who I was in my development. So it did start off as, here's the little nerdy Marquise who was scared to put on his glasses, and when I would get to the classroom, I would try to take them off so my mom didn't yell at me. Then I realized they continue to build that headache. And then I think around who I am today as a teacher, as an educator, as somebody who mentors over 6 Black boys. I think about this world a lot in terms of what we are guaranteeing and what we are truly investing in. My question to you is, how often are you also investing in the creativity, the intellect, and emotional awareness of your sons, of a Black boy in your life? They don't have to look like the Urkels or Carlton, old dude from the Proud Family, TJ from Smart Guy. They call me Cookie, and a lot of people, anybody watching that's Classified? I was called Cookie for my entire, I think it's a nerdy Black boys like canon event, no matter what. If you're a millennial, you was called Cookie at some point in your time in your life. But I think around this a lot is because this meant that they could only see me one way. So as you continue to think around the world that we want our boys to be able to grow up in, as we think around the ways in which that we must continue to challenge ourselves, I think around that moment that I was nervous to put my glasses on, what does it mean for you to take a moment to think around how you want to nurture the Black boy outside of putting his body on the line, outside of just athletics, outside of just entertaining you, outside of all of these things that they expect out of us. We continue to nurture that piece, we'll actually see a lot more folks wanting to go to school. If we're going to school, this means that we build our economy even more. We stabilize our Black families even more. We have much more of a stronger political movement, but we also are engaging in the arts. I end this off by contextualizing all of this is important during this time because we are in a big anti-intellectual movement. They do not want us to think. Thinking means you challenge. Challenges make things hard. That means the outer white world does not want us to do that. But to be in a space where they say nothing is more dangerous than an educated black man, it is important to know there is power in that, and that's why they're trying to prevent us from going into these spaces. Putting our body on the line means that our careers are done by 40. We are not living past 65. However, that education allows you to live longer. You begin to think differently. It does not mean that education has to be the only way to be deemed as a smart black boy, but it is an avenue for further survival, but also ensuring that the world that we're gonna grow up in is also kinder to each person that we come in contact with. So from one smart black boy to a bunch of smart black folks out here, please continue to encourage those black boys to engage in those spaces that are not putting their bodies on the line. Make sure you're challenging the schools to be better by your black boys, and also make sure that you raise them in a world that you want to see them grow up in and thrive in. That is all I got for y'all today. Thank you so much. Yes. I'm gonna move and I